Okay, so welcome everybody to tonight's edition of NERSA NCAA football. Once again, I'm Brian Stelzer. I will be leading the conversation. We're going to be talking about the kicking game. We'll also get into some coverage and then some fouls in each piece of this. For those that are on the call, if you have any questions or things, please raise your hand, speak up. There is a raise your hand function. I'm not just saying that in Zoom. So let me know if you have questions and slow me down. But with that, we'll just kind of get rolling. So we're going to start with kickoffs. Standard formation here, just like we have in the rule book or in the mechanics manual. In this particular case, I'm interpreting this as first half, because and not just because, but because that's field judge and line judge are on the umpire side. So first half, this is what we would look like. Press box side being to the bottom of the screen, and then flipping sides on the other half. One of the things to keep in mind is we've had some changes in the last year. Our coverage isn't quite the same as it has been in the past. In some conferences, it used to be you would count the number on your side and you'd have responsibility for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know in our conference, some crews were still referring to that. So if you are one of those people that hears that kind of mechanic, that's an old mechanic. We're going to use the new 7 and 8 person mechanic of zone coverage. So just as a reference, that's what we're going to be talking about. If you are in a 7-person mechanics league, we're still working 7. Obviously, the only difference is the center judge is just not there, and some of the responsibilities that the center judge would have fall to the back judge in that case. So I referenced the new coverage areas. It looks like this. Again, I don't have a 7-person mechanic. The difference there would be the center judge just comes out, and then the yardage boxes for each of the other 4 officials in this area just expand a bit. One of the important pieces in this, and we'll see it more when I pull the plays up, as it notes in the mechanics manual, these boxes are guidelines. They're regularly we'll have kicks go to one side or the other, and then you'll have nothing between the numbers and the sideline. Naturally, if you're a field judge or a side judge, me being a field judge, we're not supposed to officiate air, so we're going to find the next matchup in our area. We're not just going to say, okay, it's not my problem anymore. For us as field judge and side judge, as you see in the mechanogram there, we're going to slide down the field. One of the questions that I've gotten the most often from this position is how far down the field do you go? Some people have a preference that is a yardage preference. My suggestion would be slow down, and then when action's about to start, that's when you need to stop moving. So that could be 10 yards, that could be 15 yards. Typically, I end up between the 45 and the 40 on just a normal deep kick. So 10 to 15 yards is if you're looking for a yardage number, but mostly it's when you start to see teams meet. That's when you should have your feet stop, so that you can have your eyes be set. You're not moving and introducing any different another variable there. Back judge, umpire, and center judge. Back judge and umpire will stop at about the same yard line. It just looks clean that way. A lot of times it ends up being around the 50-yard line. That's varies a little bit crew to crew, and also based on how deep the kicks go. As you see in the mechanics there, it's right about at the numbers because you have a center judge. You would come in a little bit closer, so maybe between the numbers and the hash if you're working a 7-person mechanic in that space. So that's the basic coverage area. Before we get into onside kicks, I'm actually going to get some plays up. So we'll start with just a standard coverage. This is first half, just like it was in the mechanogram. So field judge and umpire are lined up opposite us. Center judge lined up back here. So as we're looking, center judge has primary on the kicker and is going to follow him down the field. Aside from that, again, think about your coverage areas. It's not so much about who is my number on the line. It's about who am I going to be watching when the blocks start to happen. So we'll see this from both angles. I apologize for the lag. If you do have the YouTube videos, I encourage you to pull those up so that you can once again take a look at that and then have it be a little less jerky. In one case, that's a block that we'll come back to. A little harder to see on kickoffs as always from that sideline view. There's just too much coverage. I'll talk about it more from the scrimmage kick formations from punts. If you have the opportunity to have somebody do a wide angle film for you, that's incredibly helpful. In our league, we always pay somebody, whether it's somebody we know, it's an official in high school and wants to come watch to do that. That's a great help. So here you're going to see I have a couple of marks from Huddle in here as the places to stop, and it's going to be about where are we there. So I had a couple of questions. We got Wingers and Nick there. Did any work on crews that reverted to the old kick mechanic? You'll see in the COC that's not what happened. For the most part, in the MIAA anyway, while we talked about it and some people still thought about it from that frame of reference, we stuck with this is how we wanted to have it happen, was in the new mechanics from there. So thinking about it from that side, find your position. I would encourage you to find your position in this play and then figure out where would you be looking when the frames stop, because that's what we're going to have here. So as I mentioned, when the blocks start to happen, when the teams start to meet, ideally this is when we've stopped moving so that we're not making our eyes move. We can focus on a position. I use this one as a pregame with my crew, and so this is my crew from the MIAA working this game. And so we just talked about where are we looking in this play? What matchups do we have? If you're the field judge like me, there's nothing between the numbers, so naturally I'm not going to keep my attention there. I will shift my focus into the next one in. There's still no matchup really happening here yet, so my first initial instinct is going to be on this matchup right here, because that's where the threat is. So especially for young officials, that's one of the things that don't be so tied to the mechanics. Look at what is happening and focus your attention on what's the most important in this space. So in this case, this is where we're looking and at this time, because there's nothing else going on, the umpire and I were looking at the same matchup. Center judge coming in and looking down the middle, referee looking up to find out where the blocking is going to happen or if there had been a fair catch, also looking up there. Live judge coming in and finding the next wave of blockers, knowing that this particular side, from the kicking team side, we're going to pick those up. So he'd be catching that next wave, those next two guys that are going to start making their contact. So I'm going to freeze it again right here. So if you're looking where the umpire and the field judge were, you're going to see a double team block that raises some suspicion. And if you're not following your keys like this and you don't follow your matchup, that might be one that kind of takes you off guard. So you see the double team there, and he gets overpowered. If you don't see that from start to finish, that's a question of who's going to be looking at that. In our crew, that was umpire and field judge both had eyes on it, and then once the runner came past, then we transitioned away. So I'll do that from that angle just one more quick time, get everybody a chance to look at it. And again, find your position, think about what matchups you would be looking at, because that's more important in a lot of cases than was there a foul in this play, was there not. It's find out where you're looking, where you would be moving, and compare that to what you see on film. So again, here's a spot where the block's at, suggestions from where our crew is looking, and then seeing where you're at. Play number 2.
Brian, yeah. Can you talk about if there is an alert or a guy that we're worried about with a blindside block and covering people coming across the zones?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Ryan. So when those things, again, if you're finding your zones and you see somebody that's going from your zone to another, I'll bring back the last play. It'll be easier to kind of to talk through it from that piece. If you see say this player coming from your zone and then crossing all the way through, don't leave him because he's leaving your zone. That's a great point, Ryan. If that's happening when you're going against the stream, so in this case, it might be if the player had come from over here and was trying to find a block, stick with that player, because when it gets to the other person's zone, they're going to come from nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. And as you can see in a play like this, there's already a lot of action in that space, and so that finding that person with the brick in the hand, we hear that a lot in officiating, is if someone's coming from your zone and not doing anything in that space and just seeking somebody out, that is when that needs to come through. So if somebody is doing that and moving from your zone to another, just because they're not matched up doesn't mean that they're not a potential fouler. That's what you're looking for, is could there be a potential foul? Find your zone, start there, and if there's clearly nothing in it, like I said, with this play, there's clearly nothing in this part of the zone, whether it's line judge or field judge. There's nothing to watch in these areas. So find the place where somebody is doing something. It might have been this guy for the line judge. If he came streaking this direction, that might be a potential foul. Just things to look at. So great question to bring up there, Ryan.
Can you back it up like halfway through that clip? Because speaking of the guy coming from the right hash all the way to the left hash is kind of what is where the question comes from.
From this guy here?
Yeah, where your cursor's at right there.
Yeah. So since I'm still on huddle, this is the player we're looking at. And he streaks across, and that'd be the center judge, and that's probably why you saw it, Ryan. You're officiating your position, so good job. You see him coming across like that. This next spot, this number 14 looks like who he's hunting out, and then he doesn't make contact. So a good point for you is, so aspiring center judges out there, if you see somebody crossing the field like that, you might be one of the people that has the best angle at it, coming from one side to the other.
Thanks.
Yep. So as we know, not every kick goes deep. So in this one, it ends up being a pooch kick. So I referenced earlier, we have a guideline of where we want to stop. And you can see here, I did not get as far down as I did in the previous play, and that's entirely because it was a short kick. There's going to be more action sooner when we do that, so we want to make sure we stop. Another kind of look at where we're looking in this space. Again, there are no players outside of the hash mark, so adjust your field of vision, bring your field across. A kickoff is where you really need to be aware and not worry about how far away the matchup that you're officiating is. You need to be able to see all the way across the field, because if there's a play like this where you have all of the bunch is towards the press box side, there is only an opportunity for field judge, umpire, and line judge to be looking on the other side of the field. So don't worry about how far away it is from you. You need to be officiating those closer matchups. In a short kick like this, we talked about it a lot in my crew, is who's looking where. And you see we have short looks from all the officials on the side, because we are not looking for fair catches. That is our line of scrimmage officials, and that's our referee that's going to help us, unless it's right there in our band of vision with these initial blockers, which on a pooch kick like this that goes just deep enough, it's incredibly unlikely that one of us is going to have a fair catch up there. It's going to be one of those mid-level blockers. So we talk about that a lot in my crew, making sure we know who's going to be looking for those fair catch signals, because at that particular point, the ones that don't have as many matchups going, or they're not making contact yet, it is your line of scrimmage officials and your referee. So in this pretty standard play, really, like I said, really just bringing it up so that we can see the difference of a pooch kick and how that makes you stop a little faster, and the action comes in a little quicker. So moving.
Brian,
yep.
Before you move on to that, you want to talk a little bit about, as a deep guy, about not getting, like the side judge here on this play, not getting caught and continuing to give your cushion up the field here?
Sure. Yeah. So as Nick pointed out, we tend It's our responsibility as a deep judge. We are responsible for that goal line, so we need to make sure that we're turning and busting tail to make sure that we don't get beat. In this case, maybe he got a little focused on this, but at some point you have to give that up, and you don't want to completely turn and sprint. But where we ended up here, I mean, I know he's my crewmate. He pulled his hamstring earlier in the year, and so that's his excuse for. But it's important. Like we're out of position. If we're on this side, we have officials on both sides officiating the play properly. We can see all of the action. If there was a face mask or anything else, it's just a different look for our back judge from this side. So maintain that cushion when you see him coming, and once you clear this block, you need to be moving the other direction, because at this point, you don't know if he's going to spring through this or not. Don't get caught flat-footed. He's moving, but then you want to stay in front of these guys and try to make sure that you're maintaining that good cushion. So yeah, that's not where we want to be.
No, and I would also say as a line of scrimmage guy, since that's my spot to get, if my side judge comes up and gets that spot, I'm just going to push him right off of it. So he's better to just keep going.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like on plays like this that are long is a short wing, is that if it's a really long return and my deep stays ahead of it, if he just starts yelling a yard line at me as I'm running up the field in case I don't have it, because maybe I'm 20 yards away, I find that to be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. And I would say as a deep, if you don't know the yard line, don't guess at it either. I've had that conversation with my short wing. Is if he hears me yelling a yard line, he's like, okay, he knows where it's at. He's not going to second guess it. That's our conversation. If I have a close, I'm like, he'll look at me and like, yeah, you're about there. If I don't have an exact yard line for him, but yeah, it's very important to help your short wings out. Long pass plays same way. Help them out on those deep ones. Okay, so moving to onside kicks, I have a couple of great ones from this particular game. Overall, pretty much the same formation. Our short wings come up from the goal line from there, and they're helping in the middle on our 40-yard line. Otherwise, in this case, second half of the game, we've got line judge and field judge on the back judge side. So this is our general formation. These mechanics have not changed from year to year. It's all the same from this piece. So looking at the responsibilities, referee, be prepared for the deep kick. Every now and again, we guess wrong, and so does the opposing team. They still kick it deep, so being prepared for that. Umpire and back judge, you were on K's restraining line just as before. The biggest, I see my typo. Line is a plane, kicks to your side. Your secondary for touching, so you're looking to see where was the ball touched, when did it cross. Opposite side kicks, you're responsible for blocking. For H and L, blocking by both teams, grounded ball and your fair catches. Those are your primary responsibilities. Side judge and field judge, we have ours restraining line just as before. We are primaries on if and when the ball breaks the plane, so that we can have a conversation with those that are looking for blocking. If we have I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. If we have contact and blocking, we need to know when that happened in relation to when the ball crosses our restraining line and who initiates that block in some cases. Again, we're primary on that and who touches first. Center judge, you're following the kicker. You got a 5-yard protection, making sure that no one hits in there. So some quick side on the group chat. We've got some questions. I can pull it over so it comes into the recording. We talked about illegal wedge. It very rarely happened. I think we had 1 or 2 justifying the illegal wedge. It had to be pretty obvious for a lot of us. Junior colleges, we actually saw 1 or 2, but for the most part, the coaches did a good job of coaching them up and telling them what they could and could not do, which was a far cry from last year, because we went and looked at some of the stuff from the MIAA when it was not enforced, and we found that there were a few, and we didn't see any this year. I don't think so. So getting back to the plays, So this was the first onside kick of the game. We weren't expecting it quite this early, and I think that's an important piece. Clearly, we're not in onside kick formation. They can still happen. Knowing what you're going to do in that situation. So the old mechanic, as I've seen from people, or we as field judges, we had a habit of leaving once the ball is kicked. In the new mechanic, because the old one we were supposed to wait until they clear us. Be patient. Make sure that you're staying on your restraining line, and you know that the kick is deep before you leave your restraining line. It might happen like this one. Oops. All right. So watching this play, this was a weird one. I'll just let it run through, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. As you can tell, they thought they'd gotten it, and everything was good. And it took us a minute to just talk through it, but we had a few different things. No, we did not let them keep the ball. We'll start with that. So, rather just for a moment, I'll open it up for people to provide their comments. Like I said, this is the side judge's side, so this goes straight to a player. Primary on this would be your side judge. I would hope we know where this ball gets touched. But for your back judges and your center judges, when you're seeing this formation, what are some things that you are going to kind of send off alarm bells for you?
I need to make sure that they at least have 4 on each side of the kicker. If I can't clearly identify that, that's a problem.
Right. And I would say, I don't know if we have a back judge on the call, but back judge, you got to be aware of where this kicking team player is as well. So you've kind of got you got to have eyes on the side of your head in addition to everything else. Is he out of bounds? Because that's one of the questions we had, is like, did he step out of bounds before all this happened? What's going on? I think the other piece too is they all start with their foot on the line, and then they run back behind it, and then the kick comes, and so there's potential for illegal formation in this bit too. And then obviously they get it here. The way we handle it as a crew, it took a minute or two. I held the spot where I saw it. We let it all slow down, and then eventually just gave the return team the ball there at the 42. So be prepared for your onside kicks is the short version of that. And if that wasn't fun enough, then the other team had to try it. This is in the second half of the game. And again, so for those young officials, we know that line is where they need to be. And sometimes you catch players doing the wrong thing. And so they're in their track stance trying to get that nice running start. Every single one of these players is currently in the wrong spot because they have to have a foot on the line. So if you look up the definition in the rule or the rule book, foul, they do have to have a foot on the line. They can't be in track stance where this is the worst culprit. Both hands down, clearly trying to get a no run start. The hands don't count. He has to have his feet there. This guy is legal. You see he's got his foot on the line there, and so is this one down here. So be aware of that. Just because you're worried about the onside kick, you can tell that that's what they're going to do, doesn't alleviate that piece of the puzzle. So I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. Looks like legal wedge, in addition to going more than 5 yards behind the line, make sure each person who kicked the ball was the only one who was more than 5 yards. A good point too. Sometimes we see those. Thanks, Sean. So we want to make sure that we know who's kicking the ball. Occasionally you do get that one weird one where somebody else ends up kicking the ball. Wingers, for everyone, how do we determine who initiates contact between K or R? So again, good question of whose responsibility is what. So in this case, blocks are going to be the primary for your umpire or your back judge, depending on which side it's going to be. And so side judge, field judge, we're looking for where does the contact happen? When does the ball cross the plane? Even from this angle is good enough. You can tell that nothing has happened when the ball is getting 10 yards. So we're not initiating any blocks yet. So they're not too early. We don't have to worry about it at this point. But really, it's a who's standing their ground, in my opinion. And again, that's tough as a side judge because I'm looking for the ball. But for back judges, umpires, center judges, Ryan, since you bring it up, what are you looking for if you're looking for who initiates that contact?
I think if K in any way, shape, or form is bracing or dropping a shoulder, initiating, it's pretty much it's taking the responsibility off R. And I'm just curious if there's any philosophical differences or what conversations are in other places. I know a clip from last year that was good on that one was the Ohio or OU K-State clip, I think, on some of that conversation. So for those on the call, when can K legally touch the ball? I'm sorry, if R dips his shoulder and is initiating contact, not K. I misspoke earlier. So just really having that conversation of initiating the contact legally and eligibility for K to recover.
Yeah.
Just the philosophical thoughts from people.
Well, like you kind of referenced who's dipping the shoulders. I think if K is standing there and waiting for the ball, or sorry, K, got me all. If R is standing there and waiting for the ball, then they're protected. If they dip their shoulder and try to lunge forward, clearly their own attempt to block because they see somebody coming at me, I would take that as they're now taking the onus off of K. So if in this case, our player here doesn't stop and turn back for the ball, he instead keeps driving forward and or braces himself, then that's going to be on him. But if he just stands there and waits for the ball and they make the contact, then that's on K. So just looking at this play as an example, even though it doesn't quite happen in this case. Instead, we see the ball come out. So from Bill, blocking early tends to stand out. It's usually when B is attempting to field the ball when it's not gone 10 yards. In this case, it just it goes 10 just fine. Everybody's heading for the ball. This gets some attention, but again, the ball's right in that area. When in an attempt to recover, we're good. YouTube, real quick, must be the play that Ryan referenced earlier for that K-State play. If you want to see another one on illegal blocking and blocking early. But in this case, it ends up bouncing around. It goes to 10 yards. Everyone's now legally allowed to touch it. And then thankfully for us, it ended up being a reasonably easy one to officiate because R falls on it and everything went smoothly. But be prepared for your onside kicks. I realize I spent a whole lot of time on kickoffs. Any other comments before I switch to scrimmage kicks? I'll try not to make this go too much longer if I have to, if I can. All right, so moving on to punts. So this is our basic formation. We're lining up a little deep. Deeps are the only ones in a weird position at this point. Pre-snap keys. This is just as important to remember. So deep wings, we have our gunners on each side, as everyone else would like to make fun of us and say we always have the person on the outermost side. Totally okay with that, but they're the ones that we need to keep our eyes on. Line of scrimmage, pre-snap, you've got your tackles, center judge, referee have the guards, and umpire watching the center. in my conference, if they have an unbalanced formation, I do have an example of this. We'll slide as appropriate. So in the one we see, we'll have a slot back here, and so um, this formation gets flipped over. So we just switch everything to the side. So the umpire would slide over so that they get the centermost of the lineman, not necessarily the snapper, if they're looking for pre-snap keys. So in scrimmage kick coverage, center judge R has the kicker as primary. Center judge has your shield, and the kicker is the secondary. Having been to several center judge things, is if you see a foul, don't be scared because of the referee. You still can throw a flag for roughing the kicker. Umpire, you've got your offensive line prior to the turn, and you're going to get that second wave. Primarily, you're blocking the backs and things like that. Line judge, head linesman, or head line judge, sorry, tackles for initial takedowns. So when that tackle is there, if you see a quick dump, you'll get that. Otherwise, you're going to flow downfield and help with that second wave as well. We have our gunners, field judge, and side judges, and back judge. Make sure that you're keep an eye on the ball, the returner, and maintaining that 45-degree angle until the catch or recovery. Joe Wise with a question: what is everyone's philosophy on side judge and field judge initial position on scrimmage kicks? Seen some line up 5 yards behind the back judge and some line up with the back judge. That is very conference specific, as I've found it. Some conferences want you to be all even. Some want you to be staggered. That depends entirely on your conference. In my conference, my boss wants us to be lined up all even, so that's what we do. So that's one of the reasons why you might see that differently, depending on where you're at. So moving on, we'll start with some NAIA football. This is another good one. We have a kick catch interference that actually has no contact with it. So as we'll roll through, once again, watching this action, it's going to be hard to see. I'm not going to focus on this. If we had a center judge, this is a 7-man crew, so we do, or 7-person crew. We do not have a center judge in this. Center judge would be responsible here because there's nothing else going on. Referee, take your eyes off the kicker until he's threatened. So when you see somebody jumping like this, that might catch your attention. I'm not going to focus anymore on that one, but that is center judge responsibility right there. And then here's your ball still in the air. That's the man that commits our foul. Clearly causes the return man to peel off. Didn't get to make an attempt at the ball. This one's a much clearer view at it. And when I said we need to make sure as back judges we stay in a good position, there's our fair catch signal. And when we see now we're straight lined. So that's an easy chance to miss a foul like this one because we haven't moved our feet. That 45-degree angle, we need to know if that ball were to come and hit the returner in his hands right now, we would not be able to tell if he touched it or not. So maintaining that 45-degree angle is going to be super important for us. Get out to the side in this case. However you're comfortable, my preference would be to move towards the press box side and then have the look from this angle so that when the ball lands behind and you can see that he's peeled off, now we know that's kick catch interference because he was headed for that ball. We knew where he was going. And what happens in this play, going back to this angle, the ball lands at the 43 yard line, backside, 37, 38 yard line, and ends up rolling for another 10, 12 yards after that. That is a huge advantage and why the rule exists. So some back judges make sure that we're keeping our angle on this. And again, for young officials, not every foul requires contact. Catch interference in this case is a good example of that. Another one for takedowns. So focus next on some fouls that happen pretty regularly on our scrimmage kicks. It's the takedowns that we have to get. We can't miss these. So in this case, maybe that's an infraction. We're going to say it wasn't. But these are our people here, and then you see the dump. So in this case, umpire, make sure that we're keeping an eye on this. Don't turn too early. It looked like we were focusing too much on the kicker on this one. Easy one to miss, but typically when we go from seeing the backside of a player, and then we see the defender that he was trying to block turn and run like that. That's a takedown we've got to get. So know that when I talk umpires, that's what I'm thinking of. When do you turn? So make sure that a foul like this has finished itself and it's not a foul, and then make your turn to see that level of blocks. So right, if that's a foul, which it is, stick with it, throw your flag, and if it wasn't, if it's clean, this is when you're turning, is when this line clears you. And so if you're looking for a time when you need to turn, that's it. That's when you need to make it. I have a couple more plays that I want to point out. This will be my last one before I give it up and have some questions, because I don't want to take too much more time. Just to give us a look, again, I referenced wide angle as it rose. There it goes. I referenced the wide angle. It's really nice to be able to see the entire field like this. So you can see it. This is, again, a spot where we have an unbalanced formation. So side judge is here, field judge, we're lined up. Just like mechanic, when we're getting close to, mechanics manual says, when we're getting close to the 45, start on the pylon. Nothing good happens if you try to start on between the goal line and the 5-yard line. So start there. Again, in this case, stick with your pre-snap keys until there's no chance to foul. In this case, there's our takedown. And you can see the flag coming in from our side judge there. Looks a little better from this side, so you can actually see it. So wide angle is great, but it doesn't show you the fouls as much. You see here, umpires, remember in scrimmage kick mechanics, you are the one holding the snapper, making sure they don't snap until we're all ready and set. That's why you see him backing out there. I deliberately put that in there. And then again, here's the pre-snap shifts. So wide guy for me, wide guy for the side judge, and then our line of scrimmage moved in one next. And so it was actually the center judge was looking at the snapper, and then the guard was umpire, referee for the next tackle, and our line judge was lined up here for that initial set. And again, making sure that we stay with that initial bit from that side. Okay, couple of quick comments that I see here. Is line judge secondary on shield and 7-man? Sean says yes, sir. And then also for the COC, B has no more than 2 yards from the inside shoulder of the returner. Helps prevent that being straight line like we saw in that piece. So a lot of things can happen. I feel like I've gone 38 minutes already. Trying to keep these reasonably short. Any questions, comments from the group? I do have a few more plays if we decide we need to, but I'd like to currently open it up from there.
Right, not a question, but I'll talk a little bit to line of scrimmage movement on punts. One of the things that we do in our league is once that kick has been made and is cleared line of scrimmage, I jog real slow, about 10, not more than 15 yards, so I'm in position to referee that play back up the field. You know, staying with the second wave, watching for those blocks, watching for those takedowns like in the play you just showed. But that's my movement on those kinds of plays is line of scrimmage push-up.
Yeah, and it might be good to look. So again, another reason why the wide angle helps. You can still see our line of scrimmage. On this one, it went sideline, so slowly shuffling down the field, and you can see your mechanics that way. And that's the biggest reason why the wide angle is so helpful. You can see yourself between plays, even when the foul's getting reported. Sure. Comment, question. Talk about the movement of deeps once the kick ends. This one is it's not a great one for it because it goes, like I said, it goes out of bounds. It lands in the white. So you see me, I'm busting tail up there because it lands a foot into the white, and so that's my responsibility all the way. At that point, the kick ends. I want to make sure that I'm getting after it. In most cases, though, we as deep wings especially, we want to make sure that we're staying behind the play. Don't get in such a hurry because we all of a sudden have spot responsibilities and we forget that we have other responsibilities too. We need to be patient, maintain that cushion. In this case, it's at least a good 10 yards. That's where we want to stay. And especially when we're near the goal line like this, we're going to stay and we're going to trail that by 10 yards at least. So hold still, watch those initial actions. So if, in this case, when that first set of blocks come and then the returner starts to go up the field, I'm going to wait until returner's clearly heading upfield, and I'm going to maintain that cushion from that way. Line of scrimmage officials are very good about helping us deeps out because we're not so used to getting those spots. So especially if he goes for a long return, they may go ahead and take it from us anyway. That's between you and your short wing what you feel comfortable with. But again, being there, I think I'd have to go searching. But for your deep officials, as you're looking at, should I be following that play? How closely should it happen on a punt like that? Be patient. And here's one that hopefully has a return with it, so that you can see how we move. Of course not. He gets the back away. But you see here, it's not until the ball is clearly dead, we maintain that cushion. We're still staying because we don't know when it's going to happen. Be patient. Wait for that to be clearly done, and then work your way up the field. Especially in a play like this one, there's no hurry to come up and get that spot. Everyone knows where it's supposed to be. There's no rush, so don't be in a rush. Take your time. Good question. Thank you, Justin Ford, for asking about that one.
Yeah, Brian. I've been caught up a couple of times when, in my younger years, when you try to stay with the play and when on those kick returns, and I'm learning that sometimes if you're slow and deliberate and patient, and look like you're hustling, then it looks better on tape than you trying to like run fast with the play, and then you end up missing a lot of the blocks in the backs, or some stuff that we can kind of pick up and clean up on that, because as you know, any and everything happens on those scrimmage kicks and plays.
Yep. See if maybe I found one that actually did something. Nope. Very boring punts in this game. Sorry. All right. If there are no other comments, I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here and listen. I know I was competing with a quiz show tonight, so that was probably just as much, if not more fun for some other people, but appreciate you taking the time. Same time next week with Justin Ford. Any parting thoughts there, Nick?
Yeah, Brian, first of all, thank you. I think I speak for everybody on the call that I appreciate your willingness to step up and present. We still have spots available, not till closer to May for presentations, but I'll send that link out on Friday. I'll also send the link that's got this video in it, as well as the video that was developed from the Virus Virtual Clinic about intentional grounding today, and any ones that I get completed video from between now and Friday. I'm trying to not send 5 and 6 emails a week to you guys. I know there's a lot of other things going on except you actually being able to be outside. But if any of that stuff piques your interest, by all means, please sign up and we'll work to set this up. Remember, Monday, we'll do a call probably at this same Zoom account, but I have to work that out with Brian regarding the first 50 questions of COC off-season test 1. All you have to do is bring your answers, and we'll discuss them probably for about an hour on Monday. And I'll look to do those recurring Monday night calls for the various quizzes we've gotten. If you get quizzes or tests from your leagues, please send them our way. That's it for me.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate the feedback. If you have any feedback for me too, I'm always happy to do that. So I'm trying to make myself better as a presenter too. So have a great night. Appreciate you taking the time. I am looking forward to being on the football field as much as the next person, I'm sure. So
I love your studio, Nick.
Thanks.
My studio. You like my nerd gaming headset? Nice. I'm totally okay with it.